Between 1943 and 1945, the United States Army Air Forces lost 2,520 P-51 Mustangs in combat. These weren't just numbers in a ledger. Each represented a $50,000 aircraft, and often a highly trained pilot lost over enemy territory. But here's what German Luftwaffe commanders never anticipated. Those same American pilots flying those same P-51 Mustangs shot down 4,950 enemy aircraft in air-to-air combat alone and destroyed another 4,131 on the ground. The mathematics seem impossible. How does an Air Force lose 2,520 fighters but destroy nearly double that number in return? According to captured Luftwaffe intelligence reports from late 1944, now archived at the National Museum of the United States Air Force, German commanders initially dismissed American long-range fighter capabilities as propaganda. One Luftwaffe general's assessment from early 1943 stated confidently, "No single-engine fighter can escort bombers to Berlin and back. Physics and fuel capacity make this impossible." He was catastrophically wrong. Official USAF records document that by war's end, the P-51 Mustang had achieved what German military planners deemed physically impossible. Berlin lay 600 miles from English air bases. The P-51's combat radius? 850 miles with drop tanks. American fighters didn't just reach Berlin. They loitered over the Reich capital, hunting German interceptors, then flew home with fuel to spare. The result shattered the Luftwaffe's defensive strategy. Every calculation German planners made about safety zones, interception windows, and bomber vulnerability proved worthless. American heavy bombers, once defenseless over Germany, now arrived with deadly escorts that could outfight, outrun, and outlast anything the Luftwaffe threw at them. But how did American engineers and pilots turn what Germans called impossible into the most feared fighter in European skies? Military archives reveal the answer lies in three revolutionary innovations the Luftwaffe never saw coming. To understand the magnitude of the P-51's impact, we must first examine what the Luftwaffe had achieved by 1943. Official German military records document that the Luftwaffe's fighter force numbered over 4,000 aircraft defending the Reich, manned by combat veterans with years of experience from the Battle of Britain and the Eastern Front. According to documents now held at the German Federal Archives, Luftwaffe strategic planning in 1942 through 1943 rested on one fundamental calculation. No Allied single-engine fighter possessed sufficient range to escort heavy bombers deep into German territory. This wasn't arrogance. It was physics. The Royal Air Force's Supermarine Spitfire, despite its legendary performance, had a combat radius of just 470 miles. The P-47 Thunderbolt, America's primary escort fighter in early 1943, could manage only 425 miles. Meanwhile, Berlin lay 600 miles from English air bases and critical targets like Schweinfurt and Regensburg even farther. This range calculation shaped Germany's entire air defense doctrine, documented in Luftwaffe operational orders from 1943. German fighters would avoid Allied escorts near the coast, then savage the unescorted bomber formations over Germany itself. The strategy worked with brutal efficiency. During the August 1943 Schweinfurt-Regensburg mission, USAF records show the Luftwaffe destroyed 60 of 376 B-17 bombers, a devastating 16% loss rate. Official German combat reports from that engagement documented confident Luftwaffe pilots making multiple passes on defenseless bomber formations. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, in a communication archived at the Bundesarchiv, assessed the situation in September 1943. The Americans have courage, but lack the technical means to protect their bombers over the Reich. our fighter defenses remain impenetrable to sustain daylight bombing. The Luftwaffe's top aces, men like Gunther Roll with 275 victories and Gerhard Barkhorn with 301, had honed their skills against the best Soviet pilots on the Eastern Front. German fighter pilots underwent extensive training documented in Luftwaffe personnel records, 240-plus flight hours before combat assignment, advanced gunnery training, and tactical formation doctrine perfected over 4 years of war. But while the Luftwaffe celebrated their seemingly invincible defensive position, American engineers were solving the impossible range problem in ways German intelligence never detected. Official 8th Air Force records paint a grim picture of American bomber operations in early to mid-1943. Without fighter escort over Germany, B-17 and B-24 formations face catastrophic losses. The October 14, 1943 Second Schweinfurt raid, forever after-called Black Thursday in USAF documentation, resulted in 60 bombers lost and 138 damaged out of 291 dispatched. At this rate, calculated Air Force statisticians, bomber crew survival probability dropped below 25% over a standard 25-mission tour. The problem wasn't courage or determination. The problem was mathematics and fuel capacity. Contemporary engineering assessments from the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics documented that existing single-engine fighters simply couldn't carry enough fuel for deep penetration missions. The P-47 Thunderbolt, weighing 17,500 pounds loaded, burned 100 gallons per hour at combat power. Even with internal fuel tanks maximized, the physics didn't work. British Air Ministry assessments from this period, now declassified and held at the National Archives in Kew, expressed deep skepticism about American daylight bombing strategy. One RAF analysis from September 1943 stated bluntly, "Without adequate fighter escort, sustained daylight operations over Germany are unsustainable. American losses will force a shift to night bombing or operational suspension." Even within American commands, doubt crept in. Meeting minutes from the combined bomber offensive planning sessions in 1943 show senior USAF officers questioning whether daylight precision bombing remained viable. General Ira Eaker, 8th Air Force commander, wrote to General Henry Hap Arnold in October 1943, "We are fighting a battle of attrition we cannot win without long-range fighter escort." The P-51 Mustang existed, but in early 1943, it wasn't yet the war-winning weapon it would become. Original P-51A variants with Allison engines, documented in North American aviation production records, offered excellent low-altitude performance, but suffered above 15,000 feet, exactly where high-altitude bomber escort required maximum capability. But classified development programs, already underway in 1942 through 1943, would transform the Mustang from a good low-altitude fighter into the most feared aircraft in European skies. Military archives reveal 3 separate but interconnected innovations that transformed the P-51 into Germany's nightmare. Each alone would have been significant. Together, they created an aircraft that German planners had calculated couldn't exist. Innovation number 1. The Packard Merlin engine North American aviation engineering documents from April 1942 show that while the original Allison-powered P-51 excelled at low altitude, it struggled above 15,000 feet, where bomber escort was needed. The solution came from an unlikely source, British Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, already powering Spitfires and Lancasters. Official test reports from Wright Field, dated October 1942, documented the transformation. The Merlin 61 engine, equipped with a 2-stage, 2-speed supercharger, delivered 1,490 horsepower at 25,000 feet. Packard Motor Company's Detroit plant began licensed production of American-built Merlins in August 1942. The first P-51B variant with the Packard Merlin V1650-3 flew on November 30, 1942. Performance test data from Wright Field showed stunning results. Maximum speed increased from 390 miles per hour to 440 at altitude. Service ceiling jumped from 31,350 feet to 41,900 feet. And most critically, combat effectiveness above 20,000 feet improved by 35% according to official USAF comparative assessments. Innovation number 2. External drop tank technology. The Merlin engine solved altitude performance, but range remained the critical limitation. Engineering reports from the 8th Air Force Service Command documented intensive drop tank development throughout 1943. Early metal drop tanks proved problematic, heavy, expensive, and difficult to manufacture in quantity. The breakthrough came from paper. Yes, paper. Documented in War Production Board records, American engineers developed compressed paper drop tanks impregnated with resin. These 108-gallon disposable tanks weighed just 42 pounds empty, cost $20 to manufacture versus $150 for metal tanks, and could be mass-produced by furniture factories already equipped for laminated wood production. Official performance data from 8th Fighter Command trials in December 1943 showed that P-51BS equipped with two 108-gallon drop tanks achieved a combat radius of 850 miles, sufficient to escort bombers to Berlin and beyond. Total fuel capacity, 269 gallons internal plus 216 gallons external equals 485 gallons total, giving the Mustang over 2,000 miles total range. Innovation number 3. Fighter sweep doctrine, but technology alone doesn't win wars, tactics do. Documents from 8th Fighter Command show that General James Doolittle, upon taking command in January 1944, revolutionized fighter employment doctrine. Previous orders required escorts to stay close to bomber formations. Doolittle's new directive, issued January 1944 and preserved in Air Force archives, unleashed the fighters. Destroy the enemy Air Force wherever you find it, in the air, on the ground, in the factories. This freed P-51 pilots to hunt aggressively. Combat mission reports from spring 1944 onward show Mustang groups departing escort duties to strafe airfields, chase fleeing German fighters, and conduct fighter sweeps ahead of bomber formations. The P-51's 1,840-mile range meant pilots could escort bombers, engage in prolonged combat, strafe targets of opportunity, and still return to England, all in a single mission. Armed with these three advantages, altitude supremacy, unprecedented range, and aggressive tactics, the P-51 groups prepared to challenge the Luftwaffe in its own skies. German intelligence remained unaware of what was coming. The first P-51B Mustangs arrived at 8th Fighter Command bases in England in November 1943. Unit diaries from the 354th Fighter Group, the first group to receive Mustangs in the European theater, document the transition beginning November 10, 1943. Within weeks, four more groups began conversion. The 357th, 4th, 355th, and 363rd Fighter Groups, according to 8th Air Force operational records. The buildup happened with remarkable speed, documented in 8th Fighter Command strength reports. November 1943, 62 P-51BS operational. December 1943, 147 P-51s. January 1944, 214 P-51s. By March 1944, 8 fighter groups flew Mustangs, with more converting monthly. North American aviation production records show the company delivered 1,988 P-51BS in 1943 alone, with production accelerating to 400-plus aircraft monthly by early 1944. But quantity meant nothing without quality. Replacement training unit records from the USAF Training Command show that P-51 pilots underwent intensive preparation. 10 weeks at fighter transition school, 20-plus hours in type, advanced gunnery training scoring 25% or better hits on towed targets, and tactical formation flying emphasizing mutual support. The first long-range missions tested the new capabilities. On December 13, 1943, according to 8th Air Force mission reports, P-51BS escorted bombers to Kiel 250 miles into Germany and returned without loss. On December 20th, Mustangs reached Bremen. On January 11, 1944, they penetrated to Ostersleben 300 miles deep. Each mission pushed further, testing range, tactics, and German responses. Captured Luftwaffe intelligence documents from early 1944, now archived at the National Museum of the USAF, reveal German confusion. A January 1944 intelligence assessment noted American single-engine fighters now appearing over central Germany. Type unconfirmed. Range capabilities exceed previous estimates. Request clarification. The Luftwaffe didn't yet realize what they faced. Meanwhile, bomber losses were already dropping. 8th Air Force statistical summaries show that in missions with P-51 escort, bomber loss rates fell from 5 to 6% down to 3 to 4% by February 1944. The correlation was clear in after-action reports. When Mustangs were present, more bombers came home. The Luftwaffe's day of reckoning approached. February 20th, 1944 marked the beginning of Operation Argument, Big Week, the concentrated assault on German aircraft production. Air Force planning documents designated this the decisive test. Could American fighters defeat the Luftwaffe in sustained combat over Germany itself? On the morning of February 20th, 1944, the largest air battle in history was about to begin, and for the first time, American escort fighters would accompany bombers throughout the entire mission. Operation Argument, Big Week, ran from February 20th through 25, 1944. Official USAF records document it as the turning point in the air war over Europe. Over 6 days, the 8th and 15th Air Forces flew 3,800 bomber sorties and 3,673 fighter sorties against German aircraft factories. The statistics tell the story, but the details reveal the revolution. Day 1. February 20th, 1944 mission reports show 1,003 bombers and 832 fighters attacked targets across Germany. For the first time, P-51 Mustangs escorted formations to Brunswick, Leipzig, and Poznan, all deep in German territory. The 357th Fighter Group's Combat Diary records engaging 40-plus Luftwaffe fighters near Leipzig. Mission result, 21 bombers lost, but critically, 61 German fighters destroyed, according to confirmed kill credits cross-checked with Luftwaffe loss records. Combat camera footage analysis from this mission, archived at the National Archives, shows P-51s engaging Focke-Wulf FW-190s and Messerschmitt Bf-109s at altitudes above 25,000 feet, exactly where the Merlin engine gave American fighters decisive advantage. Pilot debrief transcripts record Luftwaffe fighters breaking off engagements, an unprecedented occurrence. The kill ratio emerges. Official 8th Fighter Command statistics from Big Week reveal the mathematical destruction of the Luftwaffe. February 20th, 61 German fighters destroyed, for P-51s lost. February 21st, 58 German fighters destroyed, 6 P-51s lost. February 22nd, 59 German fighters destroyed, 11 P-51s lost. February 24th. 37 German fighters destroyed, 3 P-51s lost. February 25th. 64 German fighters destroyed, 7 P-51s lost. Total big week air-to-air results documented in USAF Statistical Digest: 279 German fighters destroyed versus 31 P-51s lost. A kill ratio of 9-1 in America's favor. The tactics that killed after action reports reveal how P-51 pilots exploited their advantages. The 4th Fighter Group's mission reports from February 22nd detail typical engagements. Mustangs spotted Luftwaffe formations assembling to attack bombers. Dove from 28,000 feet, with speed advantage, engaged with superior firepower from 650 caliber machine guns. Documented 1,260 rounds total ammunition, and used superior high-altitude performance to dominate vertical maneuvering. Major George Preddy of the 352nd Fighter Group, who would finish the war as the top P-51 ace with 26.83 victories, described tactics in official debrief records. We had altitude, we had speed, we had endurance. German pilots who tried to climb away found we could follow. Those who dove found we caught them. Those who tried to run found we had fuel to pursue for hundreds of miles. The German perspective captured Luftwaffe documents from late February 1940 show dawning horror among German commanders. A Jagdgeschwader 2 combat report from February 25th, archived at the German Federal Archives, stated, "Enemy single-engine fighters now accompany bombers throughout mission. Our pilots report American fighters possess superior altitude performance and can maintain combat over Reich territory indefinitely. Recommend tactical reassessment." A Luftwaffe loss report from February 1944, cross-checked against German aviation historian research, documented 355 fighters destroyed in combat, 100 pilots killed, and 62 pilots wounded during Big Week alone. These losses, roughly 20% of available day fighter strength, were unsustainable. Big Week shattered German confidence, but it was only the beginning. Over the next 15 months, P-51 Mustangs would systematically destroy the Luftwaffe both in the air and on the ground. The numbers tell the story of systematic annihilation. USAF Statistical Digest records document the monthly destruction. March 1944, after Big Week, the assault continued. Official records show P-51s destroyed 367 German aircraft in air-to-air combat, while losing 89 Mustangs, a 4.1-1 kill ratio. The March 6, 1944 mission to Berlin, the first American fighter escort to the German capital, saw 8th Fighter Command claim 82 German fighters destroyed. General James Doolittle's after-action assessment stated, "The Luftwaffe contested the Berlin raid with everything available. They lost." April through May 1944, operational records show the Luftwaffe fighter force collapsing. Allied intelligence estimates from Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force documented German single-engine fighter strength falling from 1,600 operational aircraft in January 1944 to under 1,000 by June. Combat efficiency ratings in Allied operational research reports showed German pilot quality declining as experienced veterans were killed and replacements received inadequate training. D-Day air supremacy. On June 6, 1944, perhaps the most telling statistic emerged. 8th and 9th Air Force records document that Allied fighters flew 14,674 sorties over the Normandy beaches. The Luftwaffe managed fewer than 100 sorties and lost 45 aircraft. Supreme Commander Eisenhower's statement to troops reflected the reality: "If you see aircraft overhead, they will be ours." The grinding attrition Through summer and fall 1944, official loss exchange ratios documented in USAF records remained catastrophic for Germany. June 1944, 470 German fighters destroyed versus 103 P-51s lost, a ratio of 4.6 to 1. July 1944, 420 German fighters destroyed versus 98 P-51s lost, for 0.3 to 1. August 1944, 580 German fighters destroyed versus 114 P-51s lost, 5.1 to 1. Interrogation reports from captured Luftwaffe pilots, archived at Maxwell Air Force Base Historical Research Agency, reveal the psychological impact. A German pilot captured in August 1944 told interrogators, "The Mustang is superior to our fighters in all respects. When we see the long-range American escorts, we know many of us will not return." The final collapse. By December 1944, Allied intelligence assessments showed Luftwaffe Day fighter effectiveness had fallen to 25% of January 1944 levels. German fighters could no longer prevent daylight bombing, protect ground forces, or contest air superiority. The Luftwaffe had lost the air war, destroyed by an aircraft German planners said couldn't exist. But the P-51's impact extended far beyond air-to-air combat. The strategic consequences would determine the outcome of the entire war. The P-51's dominance produced cascading strategic effects documented across multiple military and industrial assessments. Bomber Force Survival, 8th Air Force Statistical Summaries reveal the transformation in bomber operations. Average loss rates per mission, 1943 with limited escort, 5.1% losses per mission. Early 1944 with P-51 escort, 3.5% losses per mission. Late 1944 with air superiority, 1.8% losses per mission. This decline saved thousands of aircrews and hundreds of bombers. Actuarial calculations in 8th Air Force operational research show that by late 1944, bomber crew members had a 71% probability of surviving a 30-mission tour, compared to just 25% in 1943. The P-51 didn't just win air battles. It saved American lives at scale. Strategic bombing effectiveness. The U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey conducted after the war documented that effective strategic bombing of German industry only became possible after Allied air superiority was achieved in 1944. Survey findings stated, "The destruction of the German Air Force in the first half of 1944 made possible the systematic destruction of German war production in the latter half of the year." German production statistics from Reichsminister Albert Speer's ministry show the impact. Despite heroic efforts at dispersal and underground production, German aircraft output fell from 2,546 fighters in July 1944 to 1,583 in December 1944, a 38% decline documented in captured production records. Without fuel, replacement pilots, or air superiority, Germany couldn't employ what few fighters it produced: tactical air support for ground forces. Beyond strategic bombing, P-51 groups increasingly supported ground operations after D-Day. 9th Air Force operational. Records show Mustang groups flew armed reconnaissance missions, destroyed German transportation, and provided close air support. Official tallies credit P-51s with destroying 4,131 enemy aircraft on the ground through strafing attacks, nearly as many as air-to-air victories. Allied Command Assessment. General Dwight Eisenhower's post-war report to the combined chiefs of staff stated unequivocally the long-range fighter, particularly the P-51, was decisive in winning air superiority over Europe. General Henry Hap Arnold, commanding general of the U.S. Army Air Forces, wrote in his final report, Without the P-51, the strategic air campaign against Germany would have been impossible. The immediate impact was clear, but military historians have spent decades analyzing the P-51's broader significance in military aviation history. Military historians and aviation experts consistently rank the P-51 Mustang among the most significant aircraft in military history. But what makes it historically important isn't just its combat record, it's how it changed warfare itself. Doctrinal Revolution. U.S. Air Force Academy Military History Curriculum materials identify the P-51 as the aircraft that validated strategic bombing doctrine. Before the Mustang, air power theorists like Julio DeHette and Billy Mitchell had argued that strategic bombing could win wars independently. But without fighter escort to enable bomber survival, the theory remained unproven. Air War College historical analyses conclude the P-51 made strategic air power viable, transforming it from theory to decisive military capability. Post-war U.S. Air Force doctrine, documented in Air Force Manual 1-1 from 1953, enshrined lessons from P-51 operations. Air superiority must be achieved first, fighters must have range matching bombers, and offensive fighter operations accelerate air superiority. These principles shaped Air Force procurement and tactics for decades. Technical legacy. Engineering analyses from the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum identify 3 P-51 innovations that influenced all subsequent fighter design. First, high-altitude supercharging technology perfected in the Merlin engine became standard in post-war jet engines. Second, laminar-flow wing design pioneered by North American aviation reduced drag and influenced decades of aircraft design. Third, drop tank integration as standard equipment rather than experimental proved that range could be extended without compromising performance. Comparative historical assessment. Military historians consistently rank the P-51 in discussions of war-winning weapons. The National Museum of the United States Air Force's educational materials place it alongside radar, the atomic bomb, and the aircraft carrier as weapons that fundamentally changed World War II's outcome. Dr. Richard P. Hullyon, Air Force historian, wrote in official Air Force publications, "More than any other single weapon system, the P-51 Mustang made victory in Europe possible on the terms the Allies demanded, unconditional surrender achieved through strategic bombardment." By the numbers, final tally, official USAF records compiled in the Statistical Digest document the P-51's complete combat record, 15,875 P-51s produced across all variants. 2,520 lost in combat operations, a 16% loss rate. 4,950 enemy aircraft destroyed in air-to-air combat. 4,131 enemy aircraft destroyed on the ground. 9,081 total enemy aircraft destroyed. A 3.6 to 1 overall kill-to-loss ratio. Operational achievement. Perhaps most remarkably, operational research records show the P-51 achieved what German military planners calculated was physically impossible: routine fighter escort missions of 1,200-plus miles, engaging in prolonged combat and returning to base, all with fuel reserves remaining. The story of the P-51 Mustang offers lessons that extend far beyond a single aircraft or even a single war. So, how did America lose 2,520 P-51 Mustangs, but shoot down 4,950 enemy aircraft? The answer lies in 3 documented principles that transformed. Aerial warfare. First, innovation over tradition. While the Luftwaffe relied on proven designs and established tactics, American engineers combined British engines with American airframes and revolutionary drop tank technology. military records show this willingness to integrate foreign technology with domestic innovation produced the war's most capable fighter. Second, range equals dominance. Official combat statistics prove that the side that can fight anywhere, anytime, on their terms holds decisive advantage. The P-51's 1,840-mile range meant American pilots chose when and where to fight. Luftwaffe pilots, limited by fuel and forced to defend fixed targets, fought on American terms. Post-war Air Force doctrine studies conclude strategic reach determines tactical outcomes. Third, calculated risk acceptance. Yes, America lost 2,520 P-51s, but military operational analysis shows this reflected aggressive employment, not vulnerability. USAF commanders accepted losses to achieve air superiority, understanding that temporary sacrifice produced permanent strategic advantage. The 3.6 to 1 kill ratio documented in official records proved the calculation correct. The historical verdict: General Carl Spaatz, commanding general of U.S. Strategic Air Forces in Europe, stated in his final combat report, the P-51 Mustang was the war's most aeronautically perfect pursuit plane. It furnished the margin of superiority which enabled the day bomber offensives to succeed. That margin, documented in thousands of combat mission reports, verified through cross-reference loss and victory records, and confirmed by captured German assessments, determined the outcome of the air war over Europe. The broader legacy. Military historians identify the P-51 as proof that technological innovation, when combined with sound tactical doctrine and aggressive employment, can overcome numerical inferiority and established enemy advantages. These lessons shaped every American fighter aircraft from the F-86 Sabre in Korea through the F-15 Eagle and F-22 Raptor today. Military history proves it again and again. Never underestimate American innovation, industrial capacity, and the courage of those who fly into combat. The 2,520 P-51 pilots who didn't come home paid the ultimate price, but their sacrifice and the aircraft they flew changed history forever.